Hey everybody, welcome to the Bullseye channel. I hope you're doing well. Today we are going to be launching a brand new series. That series is called USPSA versus Bullseye. I have been wanting to do this for a very long time. A little bit about me. I have about 15 years of bullseye shooting experience and some on and off experience with USPSA, and I think I have come to appreciate what truly makes each one of these disciplines special. And I thought, what better way to do that than comparing two matches that I shot around 10 days apart here in a local area. But before we get started, I'm going to give you the 3 rules for life. Rule 1, don't be a jerk. Rule 2, take care of yourself. And Rule 3, help other people. And you can help me by hitting the subscribe button and the like button below. Thank you very much. In order to do this appropriately, we're going to have to invite a new guest to the channel. And that guest is Crappy Dry Erase Board. I don't know why it's crappy, but this is what we're going to be using. So we are going to be going passionless through each one of these disciplines, and we are going to be comparing the match, the date, the location, the number of shooters, the ultimate goal of the sport, the duration, the stages or number of matches, the number of guns that were required, the number of rounds, time spent shooting, non-shooting time, and finally, my results. And at the end of that, I will go ahead and pull away my major takeaways comparing USPSA and Bullseye and sort of forecast the future videos that we're going to do in this series. In keeping with rule number 3, to help you out, I will put the chapters below into YouTube. Thanks to Jared AF for showing me how to do that. An old dog can learn new tricks. That was like a Bill Clinton thing right there. An old dog can learn new tricks. That was pretty good. All right, let's get started. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. The basics of the matches. So the USPSA match was the Area 5 Championship, and it was shot on August 16th at the Cardinal Shooting Center in Marengo, Ohio. The Ohio Outdoor Championship was shot on August 25th, so just here this past weekend, at the Cardinal Shooting Center in Marengo, Ohio. The main takeaway there, I think, is how blessed am I to live in this state and live in this country where I can participate in some pretty involved matches in 2 completely different disciplines within a pretty short radius of my house. I don't know if there's a better place to be a pistol shooter in the United States, maybe, that is outside of the Sun Belt where you can shoot 365 days a year. But here in Ohio, this is a wonderful place if you are a pistol shooter. Number 4. Number of shooters. The Area 5 Championship had 338 shooters. Wowzer, holy Moses. And the Ohio Outdoor Pistol Championship, a Bullseye 2700 match, had 27 shooters. That is a stark comparison. And we will get back to the takeaway from that here in a minute. You could have added a 0 onto the number of shooters that was at a Bullseye match, and you still would have been more than 50 shooters short of the people that showed up to the Area 5 Championship. Now, these matches probably aren't 100% mirror from one sport to the other. One is a state outdoor championship, which has kind of several components, and the other is Area 5, which is a number of different states. People were coming from Texas, just in my squad, Texas, Ontario, I think the Northeast, but still it draws a lot of shooters. I think a better comparison would have been like the Canton-McKinley regional match that's shot in early July to the Area 5 because it's regional to regional. But for me, I wanted to compare these because I did them both in one day, which is not your typical 2700 for like a big regional match, but it still served as an excellent comparison, I think, here. So with that caveat, but if this was the Canton Regional, you would have had, just south of 200 shooters. But for this case, 338 shooters to 27 shooters. Wowzer. Number 5, the goal. If we were to put the goal of USPSA in one word and the goal of bullseye shooting in one word, the word for USPSA would be efficiency. That is the ultimate goal of every shooter, is to be the most efficient through a number of stages, most of which are sort of either not known or semi-known on the day of competition. In bullseye shooting, if you were to put it in one word, it's perfection. You're shooting the same course. A 2700 in Columbus, Ohio is the same as a 2700 in Oregon, right? It's the same course of fire. You know exactly what you're doing every time you do it. You're sort of sacrificing everything in the name of scoring the most amount of points within that stage. To put it in a language that I think each one of the, depending on what discipline you come from, if you're a USPSA shooter, every target is at either 50 yards or 25 yards, and they're all stages, if you're going to say stages, are all fixed time, right? So the slow fire portion, targets are out at 50 yards, you've got 10 minutes to make 10 shots. Rapid fire, you come back, you're doing time fire, you're doing 2 strings at 25 yards on a B8 center, within 20 seconds, and then rapid, you're doing them in 10 seconds. To put USPSA in terms that bullseye shooters would understand, it would be as though someone told you to step to the slow fire line, and instead of being scored based on where your shots hit, it's going to be in the number of points that earns. It would be as though we would do that divided by the amount of time. So you would be encouraged to shoot the best shots in the least amount of time, which is essentially hit factor, which is what all of USPSA shooting is based around. Really, really interesting. I think there was a little bit of like controversy on the couple of videos I had back regarding like that it's not about the guns, talking about perfection, and how I don't think that the practical shooting sports really value perfection to the same extent that they do in the traditional accuracy-based shooting sports. And I still stand by that. I would say there's beauty in both of them, right? Like if you're a USPSA shooter, you're sort of constantly chasing infinity, right? You know, the perfect score in USPSA really doesn't exist in a way, and not in the bullseye sense, because yes, you could go out there and you could either put all steel down plus every shot within an alpha, but then the time component adds this element of like infinity, because numbers are infinite. You know, there's always going to be a faster, right? There's going to be a faster and thus higher hit factor. Super interesting, really makes me value USPSA. Bullseye, it is known, like that perfect score is known. It is, you know, if you're shooting a 2700 match, which is 270 shots, shot across 3 900s for different guns, and we'll get to that here in a minute, your maximum score is 270, 2700, 270x. No one has ever done it. Some people have come close, and that was a long time ago, believe it or not, with all the advances that we've had in technology. So really, I think it's efficiency versus perfection, or infinity versus finite. Tell me what you think of that. I'm going to do a whole video on that. Number 6, duration. For the Area 5, again, I told you I shot it all in one day. That's the squad that I picked. I wanted to do it all in one day. The standard was to do it in 2 half days, which is pretty close to actually, if you're shooting a 2700, it's going to be over 2 days, or it's going to be over 3 days for really major matches like the Canton Regional that I mentioned. But for this, it was 10 hours for the Area 5 championship, including a lunch break. And for the Ohio Outdoor Championship, it was 8 hours, including a lunch break. And lunch was provided in the price of the Bullseye. I don't think that's normally standard, but I really appreciate the folks at Orpa, Dane Hogel, and everybody who provided us with those delicious sandwiches that I didn't even know was going to happen. So that was super nice. So 10 hours versus 8 hours, that's interesting. And we'll dig a little bit more into that here in a minute. Oh, hey everybody, we're halfway through this video, which is a great time to remind you of the sponsor of this channel, absolutely no one. This channel isn't sponsored by anyone. This is just a fun hobby that I do on the side. Thank you guys very much for visiting. And if you're a sponsor out there, I'm probably not interested, but shoot me an email anyway and we can talk. Number 7. Stages/matches, and I'm going to add a little bit more detail here. All right, so in the USPSA Area 5, and generally in USPSA, we're going to cover a couple different sections. There were 14 stages. Compare that to like a local where there might be 5 to 8. So this was a big match, and it was a long day. Again, it was 10 hours. I got there at 7:30 in the morning, like started shooting at 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't really get done until about 17:30 or 5:30. USPSA has, at least in this match, had 9 different divisions or classifications based upon the equipment / gun that you were using. And they go everywhere from the entry level production to limited 10 if you live in an unfortunate area, to carry optics, which is really just production with a little bit more ammo and dots. That was by far the most exciting one. Limited optics, which is really like your 2011 with a dot. You had open, which is the really, really cool race guns. I was shooting single stack because I'm an American and I like shooting 45 ACP. And then you also have revolver. We had a revolver shooter in our squad, and that is just so much fun to watch. And then they have something called PCC, or pistol caliber carbine, which roundly gets made fun of, but is super fun to watch. And if you're a Bullseye shooter and you're watching that, yes, in USPSA, you can bring a rifle to a pistol match. It looks like a lot of fun. They shoot really, really fast. Can you imagine that in Bullseye if you were like, all right, you got 10 shots in 10 minutes. Here's your rifle. Oh my God, it'd be great. Oh wait, they do have that. It's called service rifle. Now, in Bullseye, there were 18 what I would call matches, right? So yes, you had a 2,700 match, and that was the grand aggregate, in the same way that there's a grand aggregate in the USPSA Area 5. But there's also these little sub matches, because you shoot different guns throughout the day. You shoot a 22 and then a center fire gun and then a 45 ACP, and then you go to the EIC matches, which are completely separate. But the point I'm trying to get across is that really, you could go into your 22 slow fire and just really have a bad start to the day, but then know that your national match course was coming up, which is a slow fire, time fire, rapid fire. And then if you mess that up, you could go through and do your time fire and then your rapid fire. So in both of these, there are opportunities for redemption, right? It's the same way if you had a bad stage, you just step onto the next stage and do the best that you can. So there's always an opportunity in the sports to come back to the present moment and put forward your just very level best. There were, generally speaking, in Bullseye, 3 divisions. You have any sights, which means any sights or open sights. Usually that's someone using a dot on their pistol. Usually it's a long dot, like a aim point, like your old school aim point. They aren't really using the RMRs or the SROs or anything like that, but they are slide mounted for the most part. Important note to you guys who think that putting a dot, well, you USPSA guys that think putting a dot on your gun is like the new hotness and you're the cool kid in town. Your grandpa who shoots Bullseye pistol has had a dot on his pistol since the Reagan administration. So it's just like the Heinlein quote, every generation thinks they invented sex and every generation is wrong. There are 7 classifications in USPSA, and they're generally pretty transferable over to Bullseye, though they are based on scores in either large matches, I think. Somebody get me a correction if I'm wrong on this, but more commonly they're based on performance and classifications, which measures the performance of shooters across the entire discipline. Pretty cool. And again, that's based on hit factor, not number of points. But the classifications there are unclassified, and I'm going from the unclassified, and I think you compete with everybody in that, D, C, B, A, Master, and Grandmaster. In Bullseye, kind of similar. You have unclassified, you have Marksman, Sharpshooter, Expert, Master, and High Master. I can't remember, somebody put down below what the percentage of points available to be a high master in Bullseye is, but I think it's like 95 or 98%. I think master is 95%, right? And high master is 98%. That's like, I always shoot a 10 territory. Number 8, number of guns. 1 to 5. Oh my goodness. In USPSA, you're using the same gun throughout the entire match. You got all your equipment, a little trolley. That's one commonality. Both sports like their trolleys. They like their geezer carts. And you got one. In a Bullseye match, though, at a minimum, you're bringing 2. You have to have a 22, and then you have to have a center fire and a 45. And a lot of people just use a 45 for both their center fire and 45. So you're bringing more than one to the match. And for me, for this match, I shot my Pardini for 22. I then in center fire I used a 45 ACP, but I used a 1911, and then in my 45 I used another 45 ACP, which is a Pardini GT45. Then we rolled into the EICs, where you have to use a 22 that's metallic. I reused that Pardini, and then you use a revolver for a revolver match, which is like the best match. And then we had service pistol, which is, the rules change, but for most people, it's a 1911 with iron sights. So for me, in this case, 1 gun versus 5. However, you can get away with just 2 guns in all Bullseye competitions. Number 9, number of rounds expended. We're getting to the home stretch and a lot of the good stuff. Here we go. And I swear I didn't make this up. For the USPSA Area 5, it was 342-ish rounds. In USPSA, you're moving from stage to stage, you're loading your ammo, some of it ends up, in your pocket, and some of it ends all over the place. But by my calculations, I expended 342 rounds. In the Bullseye, Ohio Outdoor Championship, I expended 340 rounds. It was going to be 370, but we didn't shoot the service pistol EIC that day. So huge commonality here, right? Like a regional match and a Bullseye 2700 plus EICs are about the same round count. You're shooting the same amount over, generally speaking, the same amount of time. To me, that is pretty interesting. It's also interesting because I think that might surprise some USPSA shooters that on the balance, Bullseye shooters are probably shooting more ammo, which you wouldn't think because it's sort of this like traditional FUD-ish sport. Number 10, and this to me is the big one, time spent shooting. 458 in Area 5 USPSA and 139 in Bullseye. 458 seconds of shooting time in USPSA versus 139 minutes in a 2700, the Ohio Outdoor Pistol Championship. Holy Moses, that is a stark difference. That comes out to 1.2% of the time that you're spending on deck at the Area 5 Championship of actual shooting time. That is a lot of time to invest for not a lot of shooting time. In Bullseye, it's still not the majority, but it is leagues more time spent shooting, 25%. This has to do with the nature of the sport. In USPSA, you are moving from stage to stage, and every single shooter shoots the stage on their own, right? So you are going and watching everyone in your squad shoot that stage, and then you shoot that stage. The order is random, but in Bullseye, everyone is shooting, unless you have relays, everyone is shooting at the same time. And so it's just fundamentally different. But 1.2% shooting time, which can be measured in seconds for USPSA, and 25% in Bullseye. For me, when I laid that out on this like cheat sheet that I have down here, I had a real moment of pause, and I'd be interested into what you think about that, because it just begs to me some obvious questions, right? People see USPSA stages on YouTube or Instagram or wherever people are getting their social media, and it looks awesome, and it is awesome for that 458 seconds. By the way, if you're better, it's less time, which is, feeds into hit factor, but is just counterintuitive. But the vast majority of your time is spent during non-shooting time, which we will get to next. In Bullseye, 25% of time is actually spent in the process of shooting. Now, that doesn't tell the complete story, and we'll get to that with the next one. Number 11, non-shooting time. What are you doing with all this time you're not shooting? Because for both of these, the majority of your time, you ain't shooting. So let's get into it. In USPSA, right, remember, you're shooting multiple stages. Everybody goes at a different time, not all at the same time. That would be dangerous. But the majority of your time is spent pasting up the targets, scoring the targets, and kind of BSing / socializing. There's also watching and waiting. Now, I feel like I know what the USPSA folks are going to say, which is if you're a high-level competitor, if you are into the sport, you understand that your non-shooting time, which I will remind you is 98.8% of the time you are shooting, at least in this case, is spent analyzing. Well, let's use Steve Anderson's. You are analyzing the stage, strategizing, memorizing your stage plan, and visualizing. So while USPSA, you might not be in the shooting process, you are definitely in the competitive process if you are doing what you need to do. But still, there's a lot of socializing that happens at USPSA, and that happens at Bullseye too. But let's move over to Bullseye. So 75% of the time in Bullseye, what are you doing? Well, you're scoring and repairing. The way Bullseye works, since everybody shoots at the same time, is that you pass right and you score left, meaning that I pass my scorecard to the shooter to my right, he scores my target, and I score the guy or gals to my left's target, and we all walk down at the same time, which is kind of fun because you get to see how everybody did, right? And then they will score, that individual will score my target, and I'll come over and be like, yeah, I agree, or I don't agree. If you don't agree, there are processes to adjudicate your disagreement, which is a part of the competition. And then you repair. So in Bullseye, you're not repairing with little stickies. You're repairing, if you're good, with just the repair center. Because you should be able to get all your holes in this. If not, you'll have some pieces of tape, or you'll have stickies, or something like that. But generally, you're just stapling up a repair center. So the repair process goes a little faster, but you are scoring everybody on the line at once, which is kind of cool. All right, number 12, results. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to share it all with you, the good, bad, and the ugly. So I was shooting single stack, competing with everyone. I finished 301st out of 338 competitors. That's not too great, right? I had a 42%, not of possible points or of even possible scores in the stages, but of the match leader. So the person who won, who was an open shooter shooting major power factor, I essentially got 42% of what he got, right? That's where I finished in the match. Now, for my division, I guess you would call it, there were 11 shooters. It's not a very popular division, single stack. And I was 6th out of 11 with 68% of that division's leader. So that's just where I'm at. In Bullseye, again, we had 27 shooters, and we had I finished 3rd in that match with a score of 2472 with 5 X's out of 2,700 possible points, which gave me a 91.5% of possible points. In the 22 EIC, again, I got 91.3%, which for that 300 points of possible, I got 274 and 4 X's. And then for Revolver, which is, tends to be a little less accurate, although, I don't want to put that out there. I finished 2nd again in that one, and out of 400 points, I got 345 points with 3 X's for a percentage of 86. What I find interesting is that, I'm 91.5% in a 2700, 91.3 in a 22 EIC. And when I go out here and I shoot air pistol, right now I'm at 92%. So I'm pretty consistent across the board. All right, here are our major takeaways. And this is what we're going to base our future videos on in the series. So the first one is kind of up here, the number of shooters. And the obvious question there is Bullseye dead? So we should do a video on that. The second one is this idea, because I liked all of the comments that happened on my last video regarding the ultimate goal of USPSA versus Bullseye. So really, what is the point of the sport? Efficiency versus perfection. Is that right? I don't know. Leave your notes in the comments, and maybe we'll talk about them in the video. And then the next one is the number of guns, right? 1 gun versus 5. Is Bullseye shooting too expensive? I think is something that we can talk about. And I know that plug for Jared AF, because he has a Bullseye on a Budget series coming out, so I would encourage you to check him out. So maybe that's a video I don't have to do, because he will definitely do it better than me. And to me, the last one, which is maybe a little clickbaity, is this 1.2% of time spent shooting in USPSA. And the obvious question is USPSA actually fun? So there you have it. I think, again, commonality shows out as well. Very interesting. Same time spent shooting, same number of rounds. The one thing that really stood out to me is that, if you took the number of rounds expended across the time, it actually works out to a pace pretty similar to the slow fire pace of one shot every 60 seconds in Bullseye slow fire. So while they're the same, are they really that much different? For me, I can see the beauty in both, and I'm so happy that I live in a place and country where I have match availability and just the disposable time and energy, and maybe not disposable, and the freedoms to go out and pursue this passion. I hope you like this video. Leave a link below. 3 rules for life: don't be a jerk, take care of yourself, help other people. Thank you so much. Hold hard and shoot straight.